कॉमर्स में इमेज सर्च तो उतना ज़्यादा नहीं चलता. Even in fashion, it's like, it will contribute maximum 1 to 2% of GMV, but you'll have to put in a lot of hard work, so it's not really worth it. Connecting this back to first principles thinking, this is the feedback we got from the market, and hence we could have concluded at that time that image search is dead on arrival. Let's not even build it. But we realized we are not like Myntra. We are B2B2C.
Correct.
So here the use case is very different. Only 1 out of 3 attempts would succeed. And today, just for context, it's above 90%. अब UPI पे तो transaction fail हो जाता है, पैसा अटक जाता है, and so on. And this was a problem not just for consumers but for merchants also. Because let's say you buy chai at a roadside merchant and the money gets stuck. So you think the money is paid, but the merchant thinks they've not received the money. So that's a big problem. And PhonePe was essentially trying to stop the user from transacting if the transaction is likely to fail. Prioritize PMF over everything else. So everything you do, every rupee you spend, ask yourself, is this going to get me PMF?
Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Feature. I'm excited today. We have Movin Jain, the founder of Skydo, with us. Skydo is actually a B2B platform that's simplifying cross-border payments for Indian businesses. Movin comes with a huge background of experience across many companies such as Meesho, PhonePe, Ola, making him a product and a payment platform leader. Today we're actually very excited and we're going to be talking about some cool stuff, especially on product market fit. What are some of the golden rules for product market fit, as well as he's going to share some real life case studies. We're going to follow this by what are some of the human skills that makes you a better product manager. And finally, we're going to actually end this with a real life case study from Meesho's B2B image search app, which has actually been a game changer. So let's dive in. Thank you so much for being here today, Movin. Why don't you start with sharing a bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me on this podcast. I now run a company called Skydo. We started the company about 2.5 years back. We're a team of about 40 people helping Indian small business exporters and freelancers receive payments from their overseas customers. Before this, as you mentioned, I worked at PhonePe. I was heading payments product at PhonePe, learned a lot about payments and fintech there. And before that, I worked at a few other companies, Meesho, InMobi, Ola, and also started my first company in the social media space a few years back. Worked on it for about 3 years. That company is still going on and doing well. And I actually started my career with a bank. So I was in London for a couple of years working with Barclays Investment Bank, and before that studied engineering and MBA. So yeah, that's my background.
You have such a wide variety of experience from so many different industries. So usually, people are either been in finance, they're all time. So you've actually done Meesho, which is more e-commerce. You've spoken about your own social media company, spoken about Ola. And given your experience, could you share some golden principles that have worked when you're actually identifying a product market fit?
Yeah, absolutely. According to me, there are a few conditions that have to happen for product market fit. First is you need to know a large market and you need to know your specific customer segment. Like I tell my team, if somebody wakes you up in your sleep and asks you who's the user or what's the user doing right now, or what does the user eat, what does the user think, you should be able to answer that question in your sleep. So that's how well you need to know users. So knowing users and the market being large, then knowing a specific problem of those users, which is an important problem, and the problem is at scale. So all of those users, or at least majority of those users, have that problem. Then the solution that you come up with should work for those customers. They should be giving good feedback saying, yes, this solution works. I'm willing to recommend it to others like myself. I'm willing to continue using it for a longer time. Maybe I'm willing to pay for it. Whatever applies to your customer segment and your industry. But some sort of positive recognition from users, and then some way for it to, in a way, go viral, right? I don't want to use the word viral because it has different meanings in different industries. In gaming, virality is something very different. In fintech, it's very different. But after that, I think the last part, and this is something a lot of PMs miss, is you should have a way to find tens or hundreds or millions of such users. Again, depending on the context. If it's B2B, maybe you need to be able to find tens of such customers. If it is a consumer app, maybe millions of such customers. But you need to know where to find them.
So Tell me, what were some of the mistakes that you felt you must have made in your first startup that you ensured you did not repeat when you actually started Skydo?
The biggest mistake, just to put it bluntly, was not knowing who the user is and just saying, oh, this is cool, let's build it. As a techie, that is a common mistake I've seen many make. I've made it myself and ended up frustrated, having spent so much time and money on building something that nobody wanted. There is ideation or hypothesis, and then there is PMF. PMF is more like there's a yes or no answer at any point to do I have PMF, and sometimes it could be shades of gray. But before that, there is ideation, which is, okay, maybe there is this customer segment and maybe there is this problem that they face. Let me figure out if this is real and let me solve it, right? That ideation is a very, very unstructured and usually a very Wild West type of process. So I think ideation usually requires some motivation or some inspiration from somewhere. Just because you know how to judge PMF won't give you any ideas. So ideas, I think, have to come from many places, and there I would say it's better to not follow like a top-down structured process. You can follow that process to say yes or no to an idea, but let ideas come from anywhere. There could be from your past work experience, could be a problem that you faced working in some company and now you want to build a SaaS to solve that problem for other companies and so on. The way to know whether it's a good idea or not, I think to some extent, is just to do some of the execution, and by execution I don't mean building. I mean, think of any customer segment, go talk to them, see if you understand that customer segment, empathize with them. Does it give you energy? Is this something that you're able to sort of build onto and build a knowledge base, at least in your mind, map out who these people are, how they might behave when you build something for them, etc. And so I would say that's how you can, within a few days or few hours, figure out whether this is a customer segment worth spending time on. Yeah.
How crucial do you think data is when you're actually deciding the product market?
Not that crucial. This is slightly controversial, but I think the way I think of it, what is crucial is objectivity. And data is, in a way, objectivity. Not letting your emotions or your biases make you decide something when it is actually not true. In PMF, of course, different industries could behave differently, but at least in B2B, you will typically not have enough data by the time you have PMF. So you will need to decide that you have PMF or not basis some qualitative things. For example, talk to 5 customers who have been your initial design partners and see what kind of feedback they give. One of the things that the Superhuman founder has written about is ask your customers how bad would your life be if this product didn't exist tomorrow.
You actually started as one of the key traits that you feel that are important for a product manager is actually first principles thinking. I feel like this word is getting thrown around a lot these days. Can you first explain to us what do you mean by first principles?
Simplify your logic and not quote or not be influenced by something somebody has said before or something that's been proved or disproved before. I think that's first principles for me. So if I'm hiring somebody, in interviews I would typically check this by just giving them like a very simple problem. You're working at Swiggy and your orders dropped by this much. What do you do? Okay. So now if somebody starts applying some formula or starts applying some framework saying, I will look at it in this way, there is this X, Y and Z framework or something like that, then I know that it's basically something that they're trying to force fit here, versus if they just take a couple of minutes to think and then come up with something very basic like for example, okay, I first need to find out what's happening, why are orders dropping, and then I'll figure out how to fix it. I immediately know that, are they thinking first principles, are they thinking just straight, versus are they trying to, bring in something, like use something as a crutch to solve that problem.
When you were at Meesho was one of India's first and biggest platform for B2B e-commerce sellers, and you actually conceptualized the image search feature that is there. What were some of the challenges that you were facing with B2B sellers, and how did you actually overcome these challenges?
Just to remind everyone, Meesho now is on a very different model. They are now a pure B2C e-commerce platform. But when I joined Meesho, they were just past PMF and they were at about Series A stage, if I remember correctly. And they were B2B2C at that time. So they were building for these women who had time and wanted to sell something in their community and make a little bit of side income.
Right.
So we always had a text search, just like every other e-commerce app. And in that text search, we would get a lot of vernacular language searches. We would also get a lot of these very descriptive sort of long sentences saying, you know, sari with this kind of border and this color and so on. It almost felt like they have something in mind which they are trying to convert into text. Then the other thing is, because these were, so at that point there were a few other platforms like Meesho who were competitors, and these women who were using Meesho were also on those apps. So, and then their customers who these women were reaching out to saying, you know, this is a sari, do you want to buy it? That customer might have received some product from some other reseller. The customer doesn't trust that other reseller, but she trusts this person, and this person is using Meesho. So this customer says, I got this sari, I want to buy it from you. Okay, and all of this conversation is happening on WhatsApp. Meesho has no idea that this is happening, right? But as we were talking to a few customers, we got this use case that, you know, this is a strong requirement that these people have. And the thing is, when the customer is asking you for something, there's very high intent versus, so Meesho was completely into push-based commerce where, you know, I'm your neighbor, I send you a picture of a sari, you really like it, and then you're like, okay, how much is it? Okay, let me buy it, and so on. So it's impulse-based. But when you are sending me the photo, it means you have intent. So it's a pull, not a push. And which means the conversion is going to be really high if I'm able to give you that product at a reasonable price and so on. Now, we were not able to serve this use case, so it was like an opportunity waiting to be catered to. The moment we found this out, then the question at that point, which I think today, given AI, it's not that big a question, but at that point it was like, can we even do this? Is it even technically possible to do a good job here? So, and this was the year 2016 for everybody's context. So we were not sure if this is even technically possible. Will we be able to achieve this kind of quality? We checked Myntra's image search, my own opinion, but I felt it didn't work great. And we also asked around a few people, and everybody said, oh, e-commerce mein image search to utna zyada nahi chalta. Even in fashion, it's like, you know, it will contribute maximum 1 to 2% of GMV, but you'll have to put in a lot of hard work, so it's not really worth it. So, by the way, connecting this back to first principles thinking, this is the feedback we got from the market, and hence we could have concluded at that time that image search is, you know, dead on arrival. Let's not even build it.
Yeah.
But we realized we are not like Myntra. We are B2B2C.
Correct.
So here the use case is very different. Why don't we actually build and see what happens? Luckily, I think a lot of other things came together. We actually found a vendor who provided us those APIs, which will do the AI in the background. We had no capability at that point to build this. I think Meesho's engineering team at that point was just 20 people. And I don't think we had even a data science team. So we found a good vendor who was able to, for our particular data set, provide great results. And then we launched the feature. Within about a month, that feature was contributing about 10% of our GMV. So that's...
I mean, just the fact that someone could send a picture, no.
So the customer would send a picture to the Meesho user, who's a reseller. And that reseller would then upload that photo on Meesho.
And try and find a vendor who
exactly. So then Meesho would show all the SKUs that resemble that photo.
Oh, wow.
And because the entire reselling world, you know, Meesho and all its competitors ultimately had to some extent, a common pool of supply. And Meesho had much larger supply than most of our competitors because we were slightly larger than them. So most of the times, if somebody got something from some other platform, it would be available on Meesho. In fact, there'll be multiple copies because this is unbranded long tail e-commerce, which means that the same sari design is copied by many manufacturers and so on. So So they would actually get many options at different price points, different qualities. They would be able to see reviews and everything, and then they'd be able to share that with the customer, saying आपने ये मांगा था. Now these are the two options for you. If you want to buy, आपको 500 रुपए में ये मिल जाएगी, and 4 दिन में डिलीवर हो जाएगी, and इसके रिव्यूज ऐसे हैं, and आपको if you want to go for this fabric, then उसमें भी आपको ये डिज़ाइन मिल जाएगा. So they'll be able to give all those options to the customer. Customer would of course be delighted, saying that I just sent this person a photo, and she's actually given me these options. I can actually have this sari in my hands. And so then naturally there was high conversion there. So from search to order placed, the conversion that we saw in image search was about 10x of text search.
Wow.
For the entire reason that this use case was just so different and something that we had never catered to earlier, and this particular segment, this particular industry or space actually needed this use case.
If you had to do this feature differently, would you change anything now?
I would probably do differently is build the, it's easier to say right now, but build the AI behind it in-house sooner.
Okay, so it was outsourced, and
it was outsourced.
Later you're in-house.
Yeah, that didn't really cause a problem, but I feel all our competitors ultimately copied that feature. And to be able to constantly improve the accuracy of results and the delight that customers have from it, having a in-house team working on that AI would have enabled us to do that. The vendor had their own roadmap and priorities and so on, so they were not able to. That didn't really sort of take away from the fact that 10% of our GMV continued to come from this feature, and also by the time our competitors copied this feature, we had a huge head start over them. So it wasn't really a problem that people copied it. But I do think that marginally things could have been better if we invested in this. But it's also easier said than done, because at that point Meesho was really small.
So Movin, this has been an interesting insight that you gave on image search, and how at times, though it had not worked for other companies, the fact that you all took a punt and it kind of actually worked. You've also worked in PhonePe, you worked in B2B payments. Is there some interesting insight or consumer research that you did that actually led to you building a feature that actually changed the way things work?
I think there's one thing that PhonePe did really well, which was, it already existed before I joined, but I made a few improvements to it afterwards, which I think really helped PhonePe score over a few other competitors at that time. So one of the key things that had always mattered in the history of UPI is success rate of payments. When UPI started, I was not at PhonePe, but I am told that the success rate at that time was somewhere around 30%. So only 1 out of 3 attempts would succeed. And today, just for context, it's above 90% across almost every UPI platform.
Okay.
When I joined, it was somewhere in the 80s. And so at that point, a 1 to 2% improvement mattered a lot. Now, and the fact that at that point, the general public was still trying to establish trust in UPI. People like you and me had already trusted it, but people in smaller towns, etc., were still, not sure, and then there was fraud and all that stuff, and then they're like, UPI pe to transaction fail ho jata hai, paisa atak jata hai, and so on. And this was a problem not just for consumers, but for merchants also. Right. Because let's say you buy chai at a roadside merchant, and the money gets stuck. So you think the money is paid, but the merchant thinks they've not received the money.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a big problem, and they're not going to let you go unless they trust you and they know you and all that stuff, right? In online payment, this is not so much of a problem, because if you trust Flipkart or you trust Amazon, you know that even if your money is stuck, you don't get the product, you'll get your money back. But in offline, it's a very different scenario. So these were some of the key problems that made success rate really important, and even a 1 to 2% delta in success rate would cause a huge preference for one platform over the others. So that's something that I think PhonePe did really well, where because there were bank outages and other issues which would cause these payments to fail, PhonePe was essentially trying to stop the user from transacting if the transaction is likely to fail.
Okay.
So you could say, okay, maybe there's a small chance that this transaction will succeed, let the user move ahead. But then the user could end up frustrated. So actually PhonePe preponed the frustration, and and then they actually in that process reduced the frustration, because they said, you might have even seen this on PhonePe that, oh, your bank is experiencing low success rate right now, so you cannot do this transaction. So they'll not even let you enter the PIN, because once you enter the PIN, you already put in more effort, and if your money gets stuck, it's really bad. But even if it doesn't get stuck, you are going to end up frustrated. So people initially thought, what is this, and why is PhonePe stopping me? It's okay if it fails, but I just still want to try. Why is PhonePe not even letting me try? So that was, I would say, against first principles. By the way, this already existed when I joined, so it's not something I built, but I think it was brilliant and something that really helped PhonePe achieve better success rate, because essentially the perceived success rate in the mind of the customer is now better, because they're having to put less effort on failed transactions. And the other more important thing is for the merchant, when this situation happens where they've given a chai to somebody and now they've not received those 20 rupees, but the customer's money is deducted.
There's
now the merchant really has to hold on to the customer, and sometimes this will lead into a fight. So all of those got solved, which led to again huge adoption by merchants of the PhonePe QR code and so on, because PhonePe could actually keep the success rates much better than other platforms because of these kinds of things that we did on success rate. So at that point it was tens of millions of transactions per day. Now it's, I think, hundreds. Even a 1% improvement in success rate really matters a lot.
And what was it that they did to actually preempt it? Like, would they actually block the customer from moving ahead itself?
Yes, they would. So as a PhonePe user, you would basically see that there's a screen that says, your bank is having some issues, you can't proceed.
We're going to do a quick rapid fire now with you, Movin. What is the one surprising thing that you learned about user behavior in your growth hacking experience?
I think people take time to trust a product. If your product is good, they will not believe it till they actually use it. And one of the things that has worked for Skydo is being regulated actually helps us win trust.
And what is the one product you would admire for its user acquisition strategy?
Ultra human.
Really?
Yes, but the way they built a very strong community where people are showing off on Twitter, and people are just proud of wearing that thing and so on.
What is one of the most underrated channels for growth hacking?
YouTube. So at Meesho, we used to do this Meesho We Hear You video, where the founders, some of the leadership team, some of the people who are actually building stuff would talk about what they've launched this month. So every month we would release that video, about like a 10-minute video. All the resellers would, really watch it with a lot of craze and would comment. Like, we would get thousands of comments on those videos, and that was a great way for us to do product marketing. But along with that, a great way for us to do growth as well, because then a lot of those videos went viral, and people could really see who the human beings are behind the product. So I think helping people see who the humans are behind the product, which is, you could do it on YouTube, or for a different customer segment, you could do it on LinkedIn. But I think that's a great channel.
How do you think the rise of AI will impact product market fit?
Product market fit, I don't see too much of an impact. I think one good thing that AI could do here is just help you build faster, help you prototype faster, and probably also help you do market research faster. My controversial opinion on AI is that ultimately you still need to be smart as a human being to be able to use AI.
That's true. And if you had to give one advice to startup founders when they're trying to, do the 0 to 1 journey, what would it be?
I think prioritize PMF over everything else. So everything you do, every rupee you spend, ask yourself, is this going to get me PMF? And if the answer is no, or the answer is a weak yes, then you're doing something wrong, and it's better to not invest in those things. So for example, if in case of Skydo, if it was possible for me to achieve PMF without raising funds, I would not spend time raising funds.
Movin, this has been great. A lot of insights on product market fit, and definitely want to see you're going to be taking Skydo, and would love to have you back on Behind the Feature soon.
Thanks a lot. It was great being here.